Hey everyone, good evening, good afternoon, or good morning. Welcome back to another episode of IGN House Call. We're not real doctors, we're just picking people up from home. Yeah.
All right, so today we have Danelie. She's our super guest today, Dota 2 caster, and a bunch of other games as well. Didn't you do Vainglory? I'm pretty sure she did Vainglory. And she's smiling, it's definitely Vainglory. So Danelie, before we go into the real questions, when did you start casting for Dota 2 and what motivated you to take it up?
Oh man, this is a long time ago. So I think I started in 2014. It was ages ago, and I didn't intend on, making it into anything. So I used to watch a lot of Dota back in the day, 24/7. If I had free time, I was watching Dota, and my parents would always nag me about it. And I was watching an amateur tournament in the Dota 2 client because they have tickets and, there's a whole bunch of tournaments happening. So I was watching this tournament and they didn't really have the usual crowd of casters back then. A lot of these amateur tournaments, they had amateur casters, wanting to try and to see like how they would do. And I jumped into this game and I remember very clearly the caster left a bad impression. It left a very bad taste in my mouth. It was a girls' tournament and I don't think the cast was taking it very seriously. They, for some reason, started making these random noises during team fights. I'm not sure if they were actually saying anything. It didn't sound like English. It sounded like gibberish, unfortunately. And I thought, at that point, I felt like a little disrespected because, it's a girls' tournament. Those are very, very rare. And, these girls, they just want to try and play in a competitive scene by themselves. So I remember contacting admins and saying, hi, is there a chance maybe I could try and cast the game as well? Because these amateur tournaments, they're very open to people wanting to cast their games. And I remember being quite happy because they said, oh yeah, sure, yeah, you can start casting our games. I did get lobby access. I got lobby access. I was one of the casters in game. And I remember being very nervous for some reason. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just thinking like, oh my God, this is a very big mistake. I shouldn't have done this. But I casted the game and everything. And it was actually really, really fun. I didn't think that I would have as much fun as I did. And I thought, hey, I could probably do a little bit more of this. So I remember sticking through the entire tournament, casting, a multitude of games. I don't think I did everything. It was just whenever I was free, I was casting their games if it was happening. And then after that tournament, I got contacted by, I think it was an Indonesian casting group. And they said like, hey, we really liked your castings. Did you want to, jump in with us every now and again to do some casts? They wanted an English caster, not Indonesian, because I can't really cast in Indonesian, not very fluent, unfortunately. And so I followed them around. I casted more and more games. And then I don't know how it happened. I kept meeting new people and casting, bigger and bigger games. And I suppose like that's how everything sort of kick-started. I just casted a random game and lo and behold, I do this kind of for a living now.
And that's amazing how just like, it's like a domino effect. Like it's just kind of, as soon as you approach something, things just start happening.
Yeah, if you put yourself out there, things just start happening.
Yeah. I didn't do it on purpose though. I just sort of did it thinking like, oh my gosh, I feel really bad for these girls. Let me try and, give them some energy and actually give them a proper experience, I
mean, it's great. At this point, it's something that you still want to keep on doing.
Yeah, I enjoy casting, even though I don't get to cast as many games nowadays just because there's a lot of other games in the ecosystem. But I still enjoy, especially the really good games. Those are the ones where you just think, oh, I can't stop casting. I've got to keep going.
So right now, are you still actively Dota 2 games or have you moved on to casting other games?
So as of now, I'm still only really casting Dota 2. I haven't really branched out into any other games. I did at some point try to cast Vainglory. Unfortunately, that didn't stick because they already had their own ecosystem of casters, so I didn't feel like I was a good fit. At that time, I would have been too slow if I tried to join the scene, so I've mostly just stuck around with Dota.
All right, so nowadays you're just full-time streaming. Am I correct? Streaming and also making YouTube videos.
Yeah. So now streaming, I guess it's content creation now. I used to hate that word. Dang it. Yeah.
Okay, so now that you did say that you're still casting now and then, so what are you doing to cope with the MCO to supplement your shoutcasting income? Sorry, let me just repeat that. So what are you doing to cope with the MCO to supplement your shoutcasting income now that the esports tournaments have been postponed or cancelled indefinitely?
So we still get some casting jobs. Now it's back to the standard bedroom casting where we cast from home. I did some casting with ESL just recently where basically we just got into a big call. We had the producer on the line as well, and we just sort of did the standard procedure, but I was at home this time. Minus that, I still do my streaming on Facebook. I stream on there daily, although unfortunately it sort of slowed down because my PC's not in best condition. Besides that, I've also been doing YouTube videos, and surprisingly enough, they're doing pretty good as well. So yeah, mostly just casting, streaming, and making videos at this point. I'm pretty happy. Yeah.
So now let's talk more about Dota 2 that we've known. Sorry. So sorry, stupid. Can you hear the vacuum in the background? Is it loud? Should I tell them to stop?
Fine.
It's fine? Okay.
No, can't hear it.
You can't hear it? Oh, okay, that's fine. I can hear it. God dang it. Okay. So now that you've kind of like laid out the foundations of what you're doing nowadays, may I know how the state of Dota 2 nowadays in Southeast Asia compared to when you first started shoutcasting? Do you believe that from when most people say that Dota 2 is dying, do you believe that the game has gone downhill since then?
So this is a pretty interesting question because we're looking at the whole esports dynamic in Southeast Asia. So when I first started, esports was still on the rise. A lot of, especially the older generation, the older people, they didn't really believe in esports to be a successful thing in the future. So we went through a huge growth spurt. I believe it's mostly during 2016 to 2018. That's sort of when esports went on the rise for sure. In terms of Dota's sort of gone downhill recently, and the reason being that in Southeast Asia, we're currently going through a trend where mobile esports is now leading the way. So you've got things like Mobile Legends, you have PUBG Mobile, you have Free Fire, these mobile games, they've got a really good grip on the scene. And the reason being is that when you look at the difference between esports in the West and esports here, esports in the West, a lot of people over there have money to spend. They can buy PCs, they can buy consoles, they can buy all these very expensive hardware pieces to play these games. Whereas in Asia, we don't really have that disposable income, but everyone has a phone. And because of that, everyone can play Mobile Legends. Everyone can play all these mobile games because they have access to the hardware. Whereas if they tried to play Dota, not everyone has a PC. They'd have to go to a cyber cafe to play, and that's where they have to pay more money to play a game. So unfortunately for Dota, we are sort of going downhill because we're not getting new blood for new players. We're not getting a new injection of player base. Everything's sort of stagnant. We're not really moving anywhere. So we could say that we are going down, but I'd say Dota's probably just stopped growing because we're not getting new bases because of how the ecosystem works in Southeast Asia compared to the East. So is it dying? No, but are we growing? Not really. We're probably going through just a very growing pain where in the future we're going to have to see whether Valve decides to try and push that again, or if they're just going to leave this. I think the biggest complaint that everyone has is that Valve is very bad at advertising their games. They don't do anything to boost the population. They just say, okay, here's our game. If you like it, go. But if you don't like our game, fine. Don't really care.
So do you think that if, say, that Southeast Asians do have more money to spend, if, say, they can afford something that can basically just run the basic PUBG, Dota 2, League of Legends and stuff, do you think more people would be playing Dota 2?
Yeah, I think so. They could actually get more people if they had the disposable income. We could also argue that a lot of them probably won't play Dota, and the reason being that Dota is a very tough game to get into. It's got a very, very sharp learning curve, whereas if you take these other games, super easy to pick up, super easy to play, and the goal of them is very simple. Dota requires you to have some kind of knowledge on how to play the basics of the game. You can't just jump into a game of Dota and think, I know how to play. I know what to do. No, there's so many things that you could be doing in Dota, whereas in PUBG, in Free Fire, these other games, very, very simple. Kill people, just run down lanes. Objectives are very, very clear. So it's a yes and no question. We could get more people, but the majority of them probably wouldn't transition to Dota just because of how hard it is.
Okay, so let's talk about the professional scene now. Of course, I already mentioned earlier, a lot of games have been postponed or cancelled indefinitely. Do you think that the professional scene is super, super affected by COVID-19, do you think?
Oh, the professional scene, definitely. So what COVID-19 has done to the esports scene in Dota is that the entire DPC scene is on hold. So we've currently got 2 tournaments cancelled, and depending on the outcome of the future and whether we eventually get COVID-19 under control or not, we could be looking at more cancelled events. Now, especially for the top 1%, a lot of those teams, they aim for LANs, which is they need to fly to these different countries. They need to play at these events physically. Otherwise, you can't get the DPC points. You can't play online, especially for Dota, because you have ping issues. The only way to fix ping issues is to have everyone physically in one location. So because of COVID-19, the entire DPC season is on hold because no one can play any of their tournaments. Yeah, we have some online tournaments happening, but are they giving you DPC points? No. And we can't determine who's currently the best in the season because unless everyone plays each other in a very level and even playing ground, it's very difficult to say like who's going to be the favorites going into the next tournament. So for example, you could look at China and they might have one team that is doing amazingly well. But then if you had that team playing in Europe, they might just be a middle ground team. So you need to have that actual physical encounter where everyone plays on the same level to really see how everyone is doing. So yeah, esports for the professionals, they can't do anything. We're sort of stuck here until we get some news.
So I guess like most esports now is done more locally, I guess you can say, from their own homes. I mean, look at League of Legends currently, what they have for PCS, everything is done online. Do you think there will be a huge drop in production if, say, that tournaments were to go that way?
It depends on the countries. Some countries are currently under lockdown, so we're not really allowed to leave our houses. In terms of production quality, compared to a regular studio setup, you'd prefer a studio setup just because you can get that, the proper layout, the setup. Whereas right now we're sort of gone back a couple of years and we're back to bedroom casting, which it's gotten better. We've got better quality when it comes to streaming. The casters technically should have better audio in some cases, not due to how much money they have to spend on their audio setups. But yeah, the quality's it's gonna have to go down, unfortunately, with how COVID-19 is, just because you can't have those expensive studio setups anymore. I guess the best example was when I had to cast ESL recently. Everything was done online, and unfortunately we had the same graphics. The graphics were fine. It was just the stream quality. It's definitely not the same as being in the studio setup. We had our webcams on and I was lagging, or my co-caster would be lagging, or someone would be pixelated, or someone would be breaking up, and it's just the nature of the internet. Sometimes it doesn't want to work for us when we want it to work, but what can you do? RNG.
Okay, so theoretically speaking, if say TI were to still go on this year, who do you predict will bring home the bacon and why?
Oh, good question. We're very early in the DPC season. So at this point of time, if I looked at all the teams, I would not be able to make a prediction because we've just had another patch update, which is likely to affect the metagame. And also because we're not going to get any LANs, we're not going to see people, play in the LAN setup. So we can't really see who's going to be doing or who's playing at the absolute best. Let's say TI was going to happen in a month. If I was supposed to look at that, I have a bad habit of going for not always the best teams. Don't ask why, but my gut feeling is saying EG.
Oh, is this a bias thing or?
I'm not sure, because every season I lean towards a team and I don't know why, I just sort of gravitate towards them. They never win, okay, my teams never win, but my gut feeling for some reason is saying it's finally EG's time to actually take home a TI. But realistically speaking, it's hard to say where everyone's going to end up being because TI is just... It's not TI season yet. We've got a long way to go, unfortunately.
Okay, so now that you've answered who might bring home the bacon, so among all the teams in the world right now, where do you think Southeast Asian teams would rank among the rest?
How they rank among the rest. So we've had a couple tournaments happen. We've had Fnatic, TNC. Yeah, it's mostly those two. They've only been international. So recently, Fnatic won the Summit and they played against some really strong teams. So if you're looking for a solid Southeast Asian team, in general, Fnatic's always going to be a very top team. TNC didn't play at it. They didn't get a direct invite, so it's hard to say whether TNC could have played better. So if you wanted to look at a Southeast Asian team and you wanted to root for Southeast Asia, I would go for Fnatic. TNC as well. I mean, to be fair, TNC is really easy to love. I've always loved how TNC play. They play super aggressive. They make mistakes. It does happen with how Southeast Asia play. We do play a little bit recklessly, but I also love watching TNC when they play. But if you want a solid Southeast Asian pick, I'd go for Fnatic.
Right, nice. Thank you so much. I feel like I couldn't contribute much because I don't really play Dota 2. I have to be honest. Completely.
It's okay, don't worry about it.
But it has been very informative talking to you about this. But before we sort of let you go, what do you want to say to people watching at home right now? Like, this is your time. This is a plug for you to say what you want to all of them watching.
I think most importantly for everyone at home, guys, please stay safe. I know it's a scary time, but make sure you put yourself first, put your loved ones first, your friends, everyone that you care about. Just make sure you take care of them and yourself. Please stay home. Please play more games because this is actually the best time to play games because if you're playing games, you are social distancing. Salute to you if you're already social distancing.
Okay, thank you again, Danelie, for making time today. And for those of you at home who are watching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this video. We'll see you again in the next few weeks. Bye-bye.